Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And if you haven't hung out with me before, I have been dealing with a loss of a pet, and it's it's kind of confusing for me because I'd like to allow myself to grieve like it was a person, like it was my best friend or a family member, because my cat was like family to me. She came at a time when I first started waking up to some of these ideas. And it was crazy town for me in that experience, especially in the beginning. I didn't know what was going on, but she was such good company for me, right? So I've been kind of mopey, like beyond mopey. I've been like, every once in a while, have shed a little tear. No motivation for anything. I'm just kind of like in a big kiddie pool full of jello, and I'm just right, kind of rolling around in that misery. And it's not good for me. I know it's not good for me. I said last night in my live specifically that I was going to go for a walk today. I didn't even leave the house. In fact, I barely got away from my desk today. A lot of it, I could tell by the content, that I'm searching out and stuff, that I am looking for answers. I am looking for that motivation because, right, I am just reveling in my sadness over what happened. Hello, Kathy. And so I wanted to come in today and have a happy story, maybe a funny story, right? I want to get back on the main road. Life is life. And, it is sad when we lose people and pets and even our possessions. You can walk by I've done it so many times. You can see how eclectic I am. And I'm attached, especially on this wall here. I'm pretty attached to almost everything, like emotionally attached. Everything has a story to it. It's all a part of my life. But I suspect, if I could let my cat go, that I could let these things go. And I have been slowly thinning out my apartment, right? And taking away the busy. This will be the last wall. This will be the last wall to go. But I wanted to come in tonight and just be light. And just before I came live, I was just kind of scrolling through my Instagram, and I came across a post, and it was a lady celebrating her 50th wedding anniversary. And her husband bought her like a 1.5 carat diamond ring for their 50th anniversary. And she was so thrilled with this ring, but she had posted, I actually think it was in the lost and found on Facebook is where I saw this post. And she posted the story about losing her ring, and eventually she found it, and everybody congratulated her on her anniversary and was super thrilled that she found her ring. And then I thought, well, is that a funny story? Because I myself lost my engagement ring, right? I did lose my engagement ring, and it was horribly frustrating and sad and embarrassing. And also at the same time, because I lost the ring, my husband thought that I had pawned, not yet husband, my then not yet husband, thought I had pawned the ring. The reason he thought I had pawned the ring, well, I have to say, right, the garbage did not leave my house for 2 months after I lost my ring. Oh, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. Um, for 2 months, I did not let the garbage go. I kept it every time I filled up a bag, I put it in the furnace room. My house stank, but I knew I had lost it in my house somewheres. I just didn't know where. I tore out all the sink traps in my house, and I went through those. Everywhere's the tub, everywhere's that I could possibly think to look. I even scoured the backyard, I think, with a metal detector. And in truth, I never found that ring, right? And I never got my engagement ring replaced. Didn't mind in that because I'm not a big jewelry person besides my earrings, right? And I'm not a big jewelry person on the norm. And it is kind of light and it is kind of a lesson because whatever light story I was going to tell, it had to come with a lesson, right? Right? Whenever I show up, I always try and make sure that the lessons and the little tidbits of goodiness gets thrown out there. And so I thought, well, you know, I was a compulsive gambler, and my husband thought I had pawned that engagement ring because I was broke, because I had lost the rent, or I lost the car payment or the bill payments or the groceries in the cupboard, which I always did. I have no idea. Like, I would not have wanted to marry somebody who was addicted to gambling. At that time, video lottery terminals just started coming out into the bars, right? I was married in 93. So the 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 video lottery slot machines, they came into bars at in that year, 1993. They had been in the casinos probably for 10 years prior to that. And we had a couple of casinos in the city. And my dad was a big fan. He was a big poker and blackjack player. And occasionally the slot machines, gambling's in my family, you guys. My mother liked the slot machines. My dad liked the cards. My sisters also like the slot machines. The gambling addiction, right, is something that I would like to say that is no longer present in my family, but because my sisters still play the slot machines, it's not something that I'm going to be resolving in my lifetime because, my sisters are still playing and I'm not going to be hounding them on that. But my sister is talking about quitting the machines, which is absolutely amazing because that's how it started with me before I quit. I haven't played or I haven't gambled in 6 years, 7 years now, maybe. No, 6 years. 6 years. I haven't gambled in 6 years. And it was a miracle that that happened. I have no idea how many times I cried myself to sleep, how many stressful moments that I had because of that gambling. And right? I have to reflect on that time in my life because when I met my husband, I had just lost a lot of weight. I had just blown up in my lightness, in my happiness, in my joy for life, in every aspect, in my jobs, in the way I felt about myself, in being able to go off and buy beautiful clothes, being able to be physically active and go dancing and ride my bike and not have to be the target of unkindnesses, right? That I had endured my entire life. People can be mean, right? And people to make themselves feel good, right? If you have a flaw and it's noticeable, right? And you can get a few players behind you in agreement, it can be kind of brutal, right? And there are lots of problems that we have emotionally, physically, mentally that trip us up in life in that way where people can point it out, and it can really be a thorn in our lives. And when I lost all that weight, that light came out. I had to get married right away because I didn't know how to say no, right? I had never even thought in my entire life that the word no was going to be an option for me because I was always a people pleaser. I was all in. It was, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Let me do that for you. And not even say anything, just do it and stand there and just wait for somebody to notice, right? In those kindnesses that I was always stumbling over myself in. So, in reflection of that, just before I came live tonight, and I said, "Oh, that'll be a good funny story to tell about me losing my engagement ring 2 weeks." And then I just like one realization after another how being a compulsive gambler affected my life and put me right back into the negative. Oh my goodness. It only took 2 years and I was a mess. I was losing hair. I was staying out late. I was not spending time with my husbands because those machines, I was always trying to make my money back on those machines, right? But the worst part of it, and I had totally forgotten about this. Every once in a while, I remember when I walk by one of those stores and go, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. But I got into those payday loans when I was gambling because, well, at that time, I was lying to my husband where the money was from work. I was a waitress. I was making anywhere from, I don't know, $300 to $1,000 a day in tips in working the bar. And that was another thing that made me so happy because that money was flowing into my life too. But being a gambler and getting hooked on the gambling, I just went totally backwards in that. And tonight, just before I came live, I was giving thought to it. I said, this is not even a funny story, right? It's a story I can tell now because I haven't, right? I haven't gambled, like I said, not even a lottery ticket in all these years. And I will never put money in those machines again. Like I know, like I could go to Vegas and Reno and be around that stuff, and I would never ever ever be able to bring myself to get back on those machines and gamble again. Well, it didn't take me long, a year, 2 years maximum, And I was right back in that negative state. I was gaining weight. I wasn't tending to my marriage. I was uh messing around at work, picking up a float for my customers and then spending that float even before I hit the floor, right? Even before I hit the floor, that I was just chasing my tail, right? And it made me think, all that work I did on myself, to lose that weight and, to get beautiful clothes and to get a new job and to get back into that. I had never been in that social setting of dating and stuff and being chased after by guys before. And that was thrilling, but it was terrifying at the same time. It's why, right? I had to get married because again, I didn't have the tools to say no to anybody. And working in a bar, right? You have to be able to say no at least 20 or 30 times a night, right? And my husband, he swept me up on the very first day that we met. And right, I said no. I said no to him when he said, let's go for a coffee. I had been schooled by the other waitresses and bartenders not to date the guys in the corner who were all military. And, for the first year working there, I didn't, right? But he walked in the door and oh my goodness, he just asked me to go out for coffee. He said, really, we'll go out for coffee. And I said no. And then I didn't see him for 2 months. I didn't see him for 2 months. And the strangest thing happened. I thought about him every single day. I'd never done that with a guy before. I'd never, right, you have those crushes and those obsessions about the movie stars and the singers and stuff, but to be so swept up in an emotion and an attachment with somebody in an instant, I wasn't woke up to any of these ideas on top of that, right? So I was totally clueless. He wasn't. I'm pretty certain now, going back and in reflection and stuff, right? He knew. He was the same person as I was. He was so empathic, so sweet. I can't imagine, right? That I could have done so well in picking somebody for myself, but I don't really believe I picked him. I think he was picked for me because of that strange experience of our first interaction. I didn't see him for 2 months after meeting him that first day. And then he was in the military, but I didn't know anything about the military or anything. 2 months later, he walked in the door of the bar, and I had my tray, my drink tray in my hand, and my little ashtray full of change and just full of drinks, right? And I spotted him instantly when he walked in the door. He was a little socialite. He always stopped and yapped at the bouncers and stuff like that. He was very, very social, very extroverted, my husband. And I was very extroverted myself, right? We were a very, very good match, even though to look at us, I don't know if you would have thought so, right? Because he was 10 years younger than I was. And I didn't know anything about the military. I'd been schooled in not going out the military guys. And the fact that it was so compulsive, it was such a need for me to be around him and for him too, because I never chased him. Besides that second time that we met, when he walked in the door of the bar, I don't know what came over me. I ran with that tray of bottled beers and shots of rye on my tray, and I ran to him, and there was a table there, and I just dropped the tray right. I didn't care. I didn't care about the money on the tray. I didn't care about the drinks on the chair. I just threw myself into his arms. The very next day, he moved in with me. The whole thing was so fast and so surreal, and I didn't pick it up at the time because, again, I'm not woke to any of these ideas. But in reflecting back, right, he was somebody who was introduced into my life, right, for a reason. And I didn't recognize that, and I could have at that point lived a totally different life. I wouldn't be sitting here right now if I was still married, right? Maybe I was, but I would never have been able to get him, I don't think, to join me in the movement that I wanted to make. He was very loving, very sweet, but he was very involved with his own life too, right? But there were lots of strange things going on in the beginning of that relationship, like me losing my engagement ring, right? And oh my goodness, when we got married, this is funny. The pastor, he was they called him Padres on base. Um, he came to the church an hour late. It was 30 below zero, not 40. I try not to lie. As soon as I said that, I said, no, it wasn't 40. But it was in the minus 30s, right? Minus 30s. And all my guests, because they were military, they all lived on base. And the church was on base, right? And they all just walked over to the church. So they all stood outside because they probably came like a half an hour before the wedding. They all stood outside for an hour and a half. They all did. Incredible, right? But he came to the church an hour late for the wedding, and he was hungover. He burped. He burped in our faces throughout the entire ceremony, through the entire ceremony. And then he gave a little speech at the end, and the little speech was all about divorce. I just like, what are you talking about? This is not the conversation that we should be having now, right? But I just let that all slide. Then a week later, the church burned down. There were so many strange happenings in those first few months. And then forward, because then I'm adding to the pot with my addictions and my lying to my husband, and then both of us living separate lives because he's at the junior ranks or at the sergeant's mess, and I'm right sitting in front of a video lottery terminal, right, trying to pay the bills with bill money. Just silly, right? And it's beyond silly. It was kind of ridiculous. And I slowly, in that, right? Like I said, it wasn't even slow. It was like a year and a half, right? That we got to have together in love, right? Having fun, being a newly married couple. And within 2 years, I had pretty much, right, put so much strain and so much stress into our lives, right? I did that on my own. I didn't recognize any of that. I blamed everybody, right? Well, maybe I didn't blame everybody. Maybe I did blame everybody, right? To just refract the attention to me, like, oh, it's not my fault, right? But I had also become a bit of a liar, big liar, because I'd come home and I wouldn't have groceries, I wouldn't have gas money, and I made a lot of money. Like I said, I made anywhere from $300 to $1,000 a day just in my tip money, and I couldn't even hand over my paycheck, you know, on payday to contribute to my household and to my marriage, right? Because I was so wrapped up in the payday loans. I had three of them going. At the end, I had three of them going equal to the amount of my paychecks, right? Three of them. So it was three times the paycheck that I was bringing in. And I would go pay one, take out another loan, go pay the next one, take out another loan, go to the next one, and take out another loan. And that's what I would live on, right? For 20 minutes or as long as it would last in a video lottery terminal, right? Addictions are crazy because they mess us up in our relationships. They mess us up in how we feel about ourselves. And they put us in those negative frame of minds that just drag you down. And there was no hope for me. I went down and I destroyed my marriage. And I'm not going to say that I totally did. I contributed with my gambling, right? And even if there were other problems, right? Uh, it wouldn't have mattered because the gambling in the end would have taken the marriage down eventually, right? I ended that marriage and I gambled for another 20 years, another 20 years after my marriage fell apart. And then I fell apart too. The weight came on, negative attitude, still lying, still juggling bills. And on top of it now, I was dealing with the fact that because I was negative and because I was so heartbroken because of the end of my marriage, that I was no longer able to hold on to a job for any length of time, right? That I just went so negative that my attitude just kind of rubbed on everybody. And, right, it came at me, right? That negative that I rubbed on everybody. And then I would just lay all the fault on that reaction by whatever the situation was. I wasn't going to take. Well, I had to take responsibility for being a gambler, but that responsibility of gaining the weight back, the negative attitude, the not being able to hold on to jobs, I just blamed that on everybody else. In reflection, and I've reflected on it a few times, right? But tonight, right, I reflect on it and I remembered the payday loans and, right, what a really bad situation that was. That sometimes, right, that we get the heads up in the beginning, right? That this isn't going to be a good partner. But I had all, right? He was the perfect gift for me, but he was the perfect gift in that moment of my perfect life, right? And that perfect life only lasted. Our marriage, right? Us staying together, that was 8 years, right? And there were lots of good times in that marriage right up to the end. There were always lots of good times, and there was lots of affection and love in that marriage. It wasn't that we didn't love each other, right? But it had just become too difficult, and we had drifted so far apart, and I no longer was the woman that he married, and I turned him into the man that I never recognized. That, right? That wasn't the person that I married. I changed him. Our lives combined changed the relationship, and that marriage didn't have a chance. It really didn't. But it was meant to be. I believe just as much as I was meant to be with my husband, I believe just as strongly that I was meant to have the experience of being a compulsive gambler, right? I was meant to have that experience of well, covering my tracks, right? Being able to see if I could stabilize and hold on to that gift that I was given in my life when I had lost all that weight, and my whole life just kind of just it was just right. It was so golden. Every time I turned around, something magnificent was happening. I just could not hold on to it, right? So, to end the story, right? It has to be on a happy note because it's supposed to be a happy story, because that's what the intent was tonight, that I was going to come in and I was just going to keep it light but still keep that lesson in there, right? You know, we have expectations of how our lives are going to be, right? Because we marry, right, our loves, but in that marriage there is so much cover up. There is so much that we don't share with each other, right? Sometimes, right, we put our own ideas, like my husband said that he thought I had pawned off my engagement ring to pay off a bill, which wasn't the case. And after a while, I think he probably did believe me, because our house stunk so bad because all those garbage bags in the furnace room. But we have to recognize that we are the the instigators in what goes wrong in our lives. And yes, sometimes it is in our attitudes, sometimes it's in our depressive states, sometimes it's in our frantic frustration, scared, right? Worried. That stress was unbelievable. Like unbelievable. I have no idea how many times I cried myself, right? And just prayed, please take this addiction away from me. But it wasn't just the addiction of gambling, because soon as, one addiction is gone, you just replace it with another. I've been somebody who has always found those coping mechanisms And because I'm a big believer in change, and because, right, I understand things come into my life for a reason, that I believe that the payday loans were meant to be tagged on to me, right? Because when you're negative, you leave yourself open, right? You leave yourself open. And what's comfortable in the negative is only more negative. You're not going to get the consistent positive, right? Every once in a while, family takes pity on you, your birthdays, right? Sometimes you can really set a goal and go on a holiday, but on the norm, it's consistently negative. Even in the good times, right? In the right when I went camping and my first campsite, the tent went down and I was bummed out about it. And I stayed positive on that, but I was still bummed out on it. And the little trip ups throughout the trip, all the challenges and stuff. And I just took them as challenges. And I'm going to kick this. I'm going to rock that. Don't worry about it. I've got this. Right. It's not going to ruin my good time. And it didn't ruin my good time because I was so determined to stay positive in that. But every little trip up was kind of felt like it was meant to trip me up. It was meant to bring down the experience, right? That I wanted to have. And just by pure determination, right? I had a magnificent, like I said, there were so many I was exhausted by this year's trip, like totally exhausted by it. But, I feel that everything in that experience was meant to be experienced. It was an offering given to me. And I didn't have any choice but to accept the situations that I was getting myself into. And that's the truth. This is why it's important. Like they say, keep that positive attitude, keep smiling. And on the norm, I am an optimistic person. I am always trying to find the joy and the fun and the happiness and the kindnesses, right? And the doing for others. But that was just my nature, right? But I tell you, I could have, and I had been my worst enemy, right? in that in that experience of from light going from light to dark. If you could have started really right at the beginning, light, because you're born light, right, to the darkness of your childhood, your teenage years, and just right, and then losing all that weight, and then just having my whole life opened up to me, right? And just see the magnificence of what could unfold in my life, because those first few years, especially of losing that weight, they were so magnificent, it just seemed almost unbelievable. And I was so happy. And it was my attitude, right? My husband was attracted to that light. My husband was attracted to that light. But I let that light fail me, right? It's why sometimes when we go through, now this is actually a better analogy. when couples they 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 lose a baby in a miscarriage or something, sometimes, quite often, the marriage doesn't hold out because that sadness is there. And again, the negative, you're open. The only thing that can come in is the negative, and it's almost like a welcome mat when you're in that state, right? That is just one analogy, but in my own life, right? I didn't recognize. I wasn't open up to any of these ideas. I wasn't contemplating. I wasn't taking lessons. I wasn't doing shadow work. Right? I was just on that treadmill, stressing myself out, destroying my life. And, right? Again, I could have had an experience where all those joys could have been constantly. I could have lost that weight, kept that weight off, and maybe still been married today. But like I said, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. And that's how you have to think about things when bad things happen in your life. You have to recognize they happen for a reason. Even when my cat got sick, I thought, oh my goodness, I can't bear I can't bear this, right? And it never even crossed my mind that that was something that could happen. But soon as I said, it happened for a reason, right? Is to make it so that maybe possibly I'm a little bit more freer in my life, that maybe I could do some more traveling, that I could go away. And I don't want to leave my cat with people all the time, right? That's not good for her. So maybe in a way, something came into my life and took care of that situation for me, to take that sadness out of my life in preparation for all the joy that's about to come into it, right? And so when I have these moments over the past week of being sad, right? And they are just moments, they just overtake me, they just last a few seconds and then it's over, right? And I'm thinking, this is why, right? To get this this sadness out of my system now, before I go in to the, right, the joy and the wonder and the magnificent. And like I said, they still come into my life, right? But that's only out of the determination and the fact that I've got a few lessons under my belt, right? That I don't let myself go under. I'm allowing myself that grief. I think I'm feeling a little bit better now, a little bit more functional, but I still didn't go out of the house today. And I said I was going to go for a walk today. It was so sunny today. The sky was blue. It was still cold outside. The sky was blue. I just couldn't do it. Why? Because I was reveling in my sadness. I was reveling in it. And that's not healthy for me, because in that negative, I'm leaving myself open for that to carry on, or for something else to be dropped in, right? Remember what we were talking about yesterday, when you're down and you get that second kick, right? And I can't imagine the third kicks, right? But those second kicks are usually enough to take you down when you're down already. But the second kick will just take you out, right? Because you had enough. You can't take anymore. You're already in that state. But when you're in that state, nothing magnificent comes. So, optimistically, we are going to pull some change. Um, I think this live, What's My Good Cheer, is going to change a little bit, right? I still need to be active online, but what I was thinking is that maybe I could do 3 days a week with this live show, have my Sunday show, and then maybe pick up uh, one show on Instagram. I do miss Instagram. I do. I really love the platform of Instagram. I really wish that it actually belonged to Google. But I was thinking that might be good. That might be good, right? Um, Shorts, I was thinking of maybe going into the shorts, but that seems more like preparation. And if you guys hang out with me, I come in unprepared. I come in just like, right? That I just trust that it was meant to be. I just come in and, I just go into that flow and I just trust that it's going to be okay. Whatever the conversation is, it was meant to be, right? And yeah, so we're going to leave it at that. I don't know how light it was, but I suspect there probably are lessons in that, just things that we can do that even when we're sad, even when we're grieving, that we can take care of ourselves and we can find little ways to smile, right? When things get tough, get sad, right? Get frustrated, that we can not laugh at our misgivings, but understand them in a way that doesn't put us in a state that says, more, please. Right? I don't want to be that person. And that was a good lesson for me. That was only like 15 minutes before I came live today and I came across that post and I just sat here just waiting to go live and I was just thinking about that post and how it related to my own marriage and how I lost my engagement ring. And then you go in a little bit deeper and then you think, oh my goodness, all that money I lost at the bar when I was working, all that lying that I did, the stress that I was under, and the stress that I put other people under, right? Because other people had to pick up that slack because I wasn't paying my bills, right? Other people were paying my bills for me. Yeah, it's something. So it was a good lesson for today because in this moment I'm thinking, oh my goodness, right? We're coming out of this now, right? It's not even been a week yet since my cat has passed, but I think I'm feeling good about it. And not happy about it, but I'm good with how I feel now that I'm not leaving myself in a state. As fast as that opens up, it's shut closed immediately. And it's a matter of putting some positive in its place, right? Because it that moment came, right? That moment came, you're sad, you're thinking and you're feeling, and so it's important. I should have gone for that walk today. Maybe I would have felt better, right? I just past couple of days just felt harder than the first couple of days. And that's the truth. But the only reason that it felt harder, right, the last couple of days is because I'm feeling better now. I'm seeing the lessons in it. There's acceptance going on, and there are creative ideas for the future. And I am feeling better. So it's time to move out of that as a precautionary move to make sure that, right, I don't sit in my pajamas for the rest of my life. Okay, you guys, let's pick a card. We're going to go into it for just a couple of minutes. We're going to call it a night. It's Thursday today, so I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, actually, I think is the week, right? My cat passed away for a week, so it seems reasonable that we start moving back into life, but moving back into life in a positive way, right? And it's hard when one trip up, one misgiving, one heartbreak, one set of grief, right? It just and then it just goes back to square one and just starts over again. I have to say, that's life, right? It is life. And that's what our job is to learn how to move through life. And isn't it amazing that, we got platforms that we can share that with others so that maybe, right, somebody will learn something because they live vicariously through my experience, and they might not ever put $1 in one of those video lottery terminals, right? Maybe they'll be careful with their engagement ring, right? Maybe when they have a negative thought, they'll remember Cindy said, ooh, right? And you'll shut it down immediately because that just feeds the system, right? And I've been in and out of that system my entire life, right? I'm done with that roller coaster, and I would like to move forward in a way that gives me joy, right? I love my life. Right, no matter what's gone on with my life, I have not wasted my life because I've always surrounded myself with good people. I've always offered to myself what I think is amazing experiences and adventures, right? But that's only because this is my life. Cindy gets one shot at it, right? Maybe those other parts of me will come back. But Cindy, in this experience, it's not coming back, right? Maybe I'll be a Gertrude, right? Or a Matilda, right? I would like to think that I'm going to stay as a female, that I'm not going to come back in different genders. I don't think that is healthy for us, right? I would like to pick my gender and just stay in that from one lifetime to the next and be able to grow healthily in that, in however it's presented to me, if it is ever presented to me, right? But I like being a female. I don't think that as a male I would have survived, right? Maybe I might have been tougher, but I think probably I would have ended up a narcissist if I had been born male. And I believe that, right? Because males are just naturally brought up to be tough, right? Not to cry, to take care of everyone. Yeah, the rough and tumble of it. right? In those sensitives, I think it might be a little bit easier as a female that, right, that I might not have had those experiences even. Maybe it would have been tougher. I don't know. I appreciate being a female, and right, if I could throw it out there right now, next time around, right? Come in as a female again, right? After all, it is the age of Aquarius, right? We're getting a shot now to possibly get it right. And my opinion is, right? We need everybody on board on that, right? We're getting an opportunity to create something new and probably a little bit more balanced because women are naturally, right? Women are naturally more, I'm not going to say, right? They are, but more naturally prone to appreciate the sensitivities, right? That we care, we nurture, right? Let the guys go get the paychecks, right? The women can lay on the couch and watch soap operas all day, which was my mother's favorite thing to do. My mother worked full time, but when she had an opportunity, yeah, she was all about the soap operas. Okay, you guys, let's just pick a card here. 2 minutes, and then I am out of here. You guys, Kathy, you saw me pull that. I hope you saw me pull that. But incredible. 54 powerful words. I get this card every single week. Movement is an action that gravitates to the result, right? Each one of my lives is a lesson for me. Every one of my lives is a little bit of movement for me, right? And it's my optimistic ideas, right? Movement is an action that gravitates to the result. It is my hopes that in the end, right, that I would have created something magnificent that resulted in something magnificent that would help us move a little bit better, right? And that only happens when we just keep moving forward, keep having these kind of conversations, keep connecting with each other, practicing being honest with each other. Oh my goodness, right? That was the best gift that I could have given myself. I didn't even give myself that, right? I just felt that it was tripping me up in covering my bases with untruths, that I just wanted to move forward. And if I don't got the answers right, I don't have the answers right. And it's simple as that. But I don't think we would have consistently gotten this word every week. I get this word every single week. I could probably go into my playlist of podcast and find content on movement, right? It's really strange, right? But that's what it's about. Is just being able to pick up on the strangeness and read into it, right? Read into it. What is it trying to say? It's time for me to get moving. It's time for me to move forward. I've given myself that little bit of space, to be in that grief, right? But if I want to be positive, right, I have to stay positive, right? Don't let it. Okay, you guys. Wow, I can't believe we got that card again out of 54. 54 powerful words. Cards, just strange. Some of those cards, they just consistently keep popping up. Yeah, really neat. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.